What's happening, guys? Philip here, and I'm back in the garage to talk to you guys today about the Titan plate-loaded lat low row. I've had this machine for about a year now, and it has held up very nicely, and I would like to just discuss some of the features as well as some of the pros and cons. So let's get into it. So the Titan plate-loaded lat low row comes in at about 85 inches tall with a 57-inch depth and a 47-inch width. It has a black powder coat covering its entirety, and it has a 400-pound weight capacity and 120-pound product weight. It also has a 1-to-1 ratio on the pulleys, so you're getting the entirety of the weight that is loaded on the machine. This plate-loaded lat low row is good for a variety of exercises, including the obvious ones, which would be your lat pull downs and your low rows, but you can also do shoulder extensions, you can do face pulls, you can do a variety of different tricep exercises and a variety of different curls. Really, it just is limited by your imagination. So moving into some pros, starting with the first one, and that is that this machine is not overbuilt, but it's incredibly sturdy, guys. I've loaded it up to about 270 pounds plate weight for both rows and lat pull downs, and it's handled it like a champ. It doesn't show any signs of flexing or bending, and it rarely ever shakes when using it, so it stays pretty stable as well. It has 4 different adjustment points for the thigh pad, and it keeps you really locked into place and feels overall very well built, and I have the utmost of confidence in it. So if you have a home gym where it's really only you and maybe a select few number of people using it, then it's going to serve all of your needs and then some. I mean, honestly, I'm not worried about the longevity of this piece of equipment. So my second pro, which is also paramount to a lat pull down and low row, or really any cable machine, is the fact that it is very smooth when using. If you lube it up with a lubricant on the guide rails, then it moves buttery smooth on both rows and pull downs, and really any other exercise that I've used it for. I used Super Lube synthetic grease, which was recommended on a few home gym forums that I found, and it's worked very well. So if you just apply some Super Lube or whatever you choose to use liberally to the guide rails, then you'll have no problem with friction or skipping through the pool. So if you're worried about that, don't be. It is a very smooth machine. So my third pro comes with a little bit of a caveat, and that is that this lat pull down is tall enough to get a full range of motion on the pull down exercise. When I use my 48-inch straight bar, I can pretty much get a full range of motion unless I go really wide on the handles, and that's because I have a rep lat bar that has very aggressive steep outer angles. But overall, I can get a full range of motion with it. However, when I use more of a neutral grip attachment, especially close grip neutral grips, I cannot really get a full range of motion and really stretch those lats out, which is something I really like to do on lat pull downs. Now, this isn't really an issue for the rows because you're going to have to really stretch forward to grab the handles anyway. And the machine, in fact, comes with like 2 sets of chains and a couple extra carabiners to lengthen the handle if you can't reach it without them. So that cable is kind of adjustable, but there's no problem with range of motion for the rows. The lat pull down, I'm about 6'3", and I have relatively long arms, probably normal to medium above average length arms. And I can get pretty much a full range of motion with a straight bar. So do keep that in mind. If you're like 6'6", this machine's probably not going to accommodate you very well, at least on the lat pull down. But if you are 6'3", maybe even 6'4" and under, depending on how long your arms are, this machine will give you plenty of clearance to do your lat pull down exercises. While I don't have many cons for this machine, I do have a few, albeit very small. And the first one is the fact that the foot plate for the low row is a little narrow. When I try to use it for my rows, I find that it does not give me very much room for the actual cable and attachment. So I typically will just slide my feet out to the kind of edge of the frame, and it works perfectly fine. But I would like to see the foot plates moved out a little bit, because as they're placed right now, I really can't effectively use them. So my second con, big shocker, is the fact that you have to actually load the weights to use the machine. Now, if you are the kind of person who doesn't like that extra step and hassle, then you might want to think a little bit longer about purchasing this if it's on your list. But if you're like me and you keep a set of beater plates close, because I do have a plate-loaded belt squat as well that has kind of a weight tree built in, I don't really have to carry them very far. So it's really not that much of an extra hassle. So if you do have plates close enough to the machine to where it really minimizes that hassle, it's really not that big of a deal. But do keep in mind, it does wear on you a little bit over time, having to load and unload the plates every single time you want to use it. Especially if you want to go from like a lat pull down to a face pull, where you have to use completely different sets of plates as far as maybe 45s and 25s are concerned. So just keep that in mind. My third con for this machine, and it's probably the biggest con, it's my only real gripe with it, is the fact that it comes with a lat bar and a low row bar, they call it. I mean, I would call it more of a straight bar, and they are absolute trash. Honestly, if you're getting this machine, just go ahead and buy your own lat bar and row handle, because you are not going to want to use the ones that come with this machine. I would rather see Titan save it, not even send it with those attachments, and maybe offer a little bit lower price, you know, by 20 bucks or so, or 30 bucks, just to offset that a little bit, because the handles that come with it, if you're a relatively wide person, they're just not really even usable. I think the lat bar is like 37.5 inches wide, just to give you a reference. And most lat bars are typically 48 inches wide. So just don't use them, okay? So my last thing to kind of throw out there, and I wouldn't say this is a pro or a con, it's just a beware for anybody who does buy this machine ultimately, is the fact that when installing it, pay close attention to how the cable is threaded through the top tubing. Basically, when you are putting this machine together, you have to take those bolts out and thread that cable through the top tubing and pull it tight before you reinstall the bolts. If you don't do that, the cable will travel under the bolts, and when you try to use the lat pull down, it's just going to friction against those bolts basically until you ruin your cable, which is exactly what I did. It felt terrible. I thought the machine was broken. It just ended up being the fact that I didn't pay close enough attention to the directions to see that I needed to pull the cable tight so that it was over both of those bolts, and it was trapped under the reinstalled bolts. So don't make that mistake. Read the directions. So my final verdict, guys, is if you're interested in this machine, I say pull the trigger. This machine is sitting at about $499.99 currently, and the selectorized version is sitting at about $1,700. So this machine is a lot easier buy than it was 6 months ago when you were trying to decide between the two. So if you do want a machine that is solid and sturdy and feels really good to use, and really you and maybe a select few other people are going to be using it and not putting an overly large amount of wear and tear on it, then I say this is a great buy. So if you have this machine and you want to weigh in, give your experiences about it, or you want to throw an alternative out there, just drop it down in the comment section below. I appreciate you guys watching this, and I'll catch you guys later.